Hey there, welcome to the Explainer. So today we're talking about wine and your health, but we're going to approach it from an angle that I promise you have never thought of before, the world of video games. Yeah, you heard that right. Stick with me because this connection is kind of mind-blowing.
All right, so what on earth is the connection here? On one side, you've got the tech that lets you play Windows video games on a Linux computer, and on the other, you have the actual health effects of drinking a glass of wine. I mean, they couldn't seem more different, could they? Well, that's exactly the puzzle we're about to piece together.
The secret, the thing that ties all of this together, really comes down to one single powerful idea. It's an idea that bridges the gap between software and our own biology. It all starts with translation. Okay, so if you're a gamer, you might know this. To get a program built for Windows to run on a completely different system like Linux, you need what's called a compatibility layer. Think of something like Valve's Proton. It's basically a genius translator that works in real time, taking all the Windows commands and making them understandable to Linux. It makes two totally incompatible systems, well, compatible. Okay, got that? Hang on to that idea.
Now let's pivot from computers to, well, us. Our bodies and wine are also two incredibly complex systems that don't naturally speak the same language. You've got wine, which is just this complicated cocktail of chemicals, and its main ingredient is ethanol, which, let's be real, our body treats like a poison. So when you introduce one to the other, you've got a major compatibility issue on your hands.
And this leads us to the big central question of this whole explainer. If our bodies see the ethanol in wine as a threat, is it possible that wine contains other things, other compounds that act like a biological compatibility layer? You know, something that helps our system translate and manage the stress of it all.
And believe it or not, scientists have been on the hunt for exactly that for decades, this idea of a biotranslator. And what they found is a whole family of compounds that seem to be doing that exact job.
Out of all of them, there's one that gets all the attention. It's the main character in our story, the most famous of these compounds, resveratrol. You find it in the skins of grapes. And this is where things get really, really cool. Now, the wild thing about resveratrol is that it's not some simple one-trick pony. It's more like a Swiss Army knife for your cells. As you can see here, it doesn't just target one thing. It's a complex modulator, meaning it interacts with tons of different pathways inside our cells, tweaking everything from inflammation to metabolism to how long our cells live. In fact, this has totally changed how scientists think about antioxidants. The new term they're using for things like resveratrol is interactive biomolecular vehicles. It's a mouthful, I know, but instead of just cleaning up damage, they act more like software patches. They flip switches in our body's own defense systems, activating pathways like NRF2, which basically tells our cells, hey, power up our own defenses. They help our body manage the stress itself. So you always hear about red wine, right? Not so much white wine. Well, this is why. Resveratrol and all those other helpful compounds are concentrated in the grape skins. When you make red wine, you ferment it with the skins on, which pulls all that good stuff out. With white wine, you take the skins off. And the difference is huge. We're talking up to 10 times more of these bioactive compounds in red. Okay, so we've got our biocompatibility layer in these phenolic compounds. The big question is, does it actually work? How does it perform in the real world? Let's check the performance stats on this, kind of like reading the user reviews for a few key health areas.
First up, heart disease.
So check this out. The data is pretty compelling. It suggests that light drinkers in general seem to have a lower risk of dying from heart disease compared to people who don't drink at all. But then you zoom in on just the wine drinkers, and their relative risk is even lower. Pretty interesting stuff. All right, what about type 2 diabetes? For this one, scientists talk about something called a J-shaped curve. It's kind of weird. It means the point of lowest risk isn't zero alcohol. Instead, meta-analyses found that for men, the sweet spot was around 22 grams a day, and for women, around 24 grams. After that point, the risk starts to go back up, creating that J shape on a graph. And finally, how does it perform when it comes to brain health? And when we look at the brain, the numbers are honestly pretty jaw-dropping. Multiple studies have found these really strong associations between moderate wine drinking and a significantly lower risk of developing dementia, Alzheimer's, and even just general cognitive decline when compared to non-drinkers. Whoa, okay, hold on. Before you run out to the store, we absolutely have to talk about the fine print, the big, flashing warning signs. Because this whole story is definitely not all sunshine and roses. This program has some serious bugs. And here is the absolute core of the problem. No matter how many amazing compounds are in that glass of wine, they cannot change one fundamental fact. Our body breaks down ethanol into a substance called acetaldehyde. And this stuff is bad news. It's a reactive toxin that can damage pretty much everything it touches in our cells, and it's a known carcinogen. The biocompatibility layer can help, but it can't get rid of the core toxin.
And this is where things get really complicated, and frankly a bit contradictory. On one hand, you have lab studies showing that resveratrol itself has properties that might help prevent cancer. It seems to interact with pathways that could, in theory, be protective.
But, and this is a huge but, when you look at the big picture, the consensus from major health organizations like the World Cancer Research Fund is crystal clear. Because of that acetaldehyde, drinking any amount of alcohol increases your risk for certain types of cancer. Full stop. When it comes to cancer prevention, their advice is simple. It's best not to drink at all. And look, when it comes to younger people, say under 40, the science isn't fuzzy at all. It is dead clear. Major studies like the global burden of disease are emphatic. For this age group, alcohol has zero health benefits, only risks. It's the #1 risk factor for dying prematurely for people aged 15 to 49, tied to everything from accidents to damaging brain development. So what do we do with all this? We have these potential benefits for some people and these massive, serious risks for others. How do you make sense of that? Well, the final piece of the puzzle might not be about what you're drinking, but how you're drinking it. People talk about the Mediterranean diet all the time, right? Well, the way people in those regions traditionally drink wine is really interesting, and it seems to be associated with better health outcomes. It basically comes down to 2 simple rules. First, moderation is key. We're talking 1 glass a day for women, maybe 2 for men max. And second, and this is so important, wine is almost always consumed with a meal. Food in your stomach slows down how fast you absorb the ethanol, which means you don't get that big toxic spike in your bloodstream. And that brings us right back to where we started, with our video game analogy. Maybe wine is this super complex piece of software. It's got some amazing features for sure, but it also has some really dangerous bugs. And perhaps the Mediterranean approach, strict moderation, always with food, is the user manual, the proper way to run the program to maximize the features while minimizing the risks. It's definitely something to think about.